I thought that girls that smoked would fuck. That's what I thought. You know, it never proved to be wrong, really, either.
I'm glad you're here. This is going to be a book review on Starting Strength by Mark Rippetoe. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a little background from myself so you know where this review is coming from, because if you don't, then it's not worth much to you, right? So essentially, I'm 22 years old right now. I just turned 22 yesterday. Pretty cool. And I started lifting weights in middle school as a kid. And essentially, I liked lifting weights, and I thought I kind of knew what I was doing. I had no idea at all, and neither did my middle school gym teachers. Like, just in retrospect, just thinking about the types of people that these colleges are cranking out that are becoming gym teachers, these people have no clue what they're doing. They get a degree in rolling bouncy balls to the kids, and we have these people coaching weightlifting. Anyways, so after middle school, I get to high school, and I had this retarded high school football coach, and at the time we all thought he was great and stuff, and he had these workouts for us on the board. He probably found them online or whatever, and I was like, oh wow, this guy knows how to organize and structure workouts. I'm in luck. Like, look how lucky I am. Well, it turns out he had no idea what he was doing, and neither did we. Nobody did the lifts the correct way, and we'd max out in high school, and we'd literally do like quarter squats, like go a quarter of the way down. And there'd be like some fat kid with like 500 pounds on his back. He'd go a quarter of the way down and back up, and everyone would be screaming. And, it was just really stupid and Mickey Mouse. So then I go to a new high school, my last 2 years of high school, and then there's two teachers there. They both have a master's degree, one in kinesiology, which is pretty much worthless, and the other in exercise science, which is also pretty much worthless. And they both were like exercise gurus in their own mind. But neither of them really knew how to do the lifts properly. And they would try to program our workouts and stuff, but really nobody got any stronger. I thought I was getting stronger, but I wasn't. And, maybe a little bit. Obviously when you do something, you're going to get a little bit of a result. Literally, I was not that strong. I never got that strong, and I was incredibly unsatisfied. So then I get to college. I played Division II baseball for a year, and of course, my coach, weightlifting coach that we had, not really any clue what he was doing either. Just like most people, he said he got his workout from, a minor league team or whatever. Whatever we were doing was really silly. It was rubber bands, and, we'd lift weights a little bit, but nobody was that strong. Nobody really knew what they were doing. And it was frustrating for me because I was 6 foot tall, 170 pounds my freshman year of college, and my senior year of high school, 6 foot tall, 170. But I was a skinny kid, 6 foot tall, 170 is a thin person. And I was frustrated because I was like, I know that I have potential to do something more. And it was frustrating to be doing things that I felt in my heart were a waste of my time. And so essentially what I did is I wasn't happy. So I, read essentially every book on Amazon. You type in weightlifting on Amazon, and I've pretty much read every book on there. I've read several books on exercise in general, weightlifting, everything. I've read, no joke, probably 10 books on Amazon. I have them all in my bedroom. And I really was never satisfied. And then I started reading in National Strength and Conditioning Association journals. And even then I was like, this is not what I'm looking for. I need someone to give me something fact-based. I need a tunnel of progression that I can go through and come out the end being a happy man who knows what he's doing in the weight room. And I have yet to find that, And so I was really frustrated. And oh yeah, I wanted to mention this too. I even spent a lot of time on YouTube. And you have all these clowns on YouTube with fitness channels, and they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. You have people like Elliot Hulse, and I'm sure he's a really cool guy, and he probably is strong. He's naturally a big fucking dude, and he probably knows a little bit, but if you look at what he says and stuff, it's a lot of really stupid horseshit. To be honest, it's really silly. He definitely does not give you anything concrete to do over the long term. He doesn't give you any set of scientific principles to follow or anything like that. So it's frustrating, right? So essentially, I watched a bunch of really stupid fitness channels on YouTube, and after being incredibly frustrated this whole time, what I decided to do is I paid a bunch of money, several $100s, to go see Eric Cressey in Florida at his own gym. And if you don't know who that is, he's essentially the person who he's wrote a lot of material that physical therapists use in their school and stuff. But he himself is not a physical therapist, but he's a really successful businessman, trainer. He has like a few like really big gyms. Like a lot of exercise science majors that are like top of their class go internship with him. He's like very successful in the exercise science community. And he's wrote a bunch of books. So essentially I read a few of his books, and I just decided to Google his name, and I saw his blog and all this different stuff. And so I went to his gym in Florida. And ironically, it's actually in the same town where I was born, which is kind of cool. But I went to his gym, spent all this money, and I got this really advanced workout that was made for me to fix my muscular imbalances and all this different stuff. And I was doing this workout, and it just didn't feel real. It did not feel like I was actually getting something done in the gym. Like for example, this workout prescribed a 45-minute warm-up where I was doing worms, I guess, where you crawl your hands out and crawl your feet back up to your hands. And I felt so stupid doing this stuff. And it felt so gay and retarded. It was just so dumb. And I just I don't want to do this anymore. I was like, I don't care what it is, I'm going to figure out what I need to do to get done what I wanted. So essentially, I listened to a lot of radio shows and podcasts and different things, and I heard about starting strength several different times. And every time I heard about starting strength, I looked it up on Amazon, and I read the description, and it was like, oh, we're going to teach you the 5 basic lifts. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, this is stupid, man. I was like, I already do one-legged squats. I do, goblin squats. I do all this different stuff. Why would I want to learn the basics? I know the basics. And so I never bought starting strength. I always skipped over it because I thought it was too basic for me. I essentially had like an exercise science knowledge mindset with never going to college for that. So I read a lot of journals, I read a lot of books, and so finally one day I was like, you know what? I was so angry. I was like, I'm going to buy Starting Strength because another person recommended it to me, and not a personal friend, a person online that I trusted. And essentially I looked it up on Amazon. I was like 900 5-star reviews. I'm like, if the free market says this book is good, I must be missing something. So I bought the book. And immediately when I got it in the mail, I opened it up and I started reading it. And within the first few chapters, Mark Rippetoe, the author, explains precisely why strength training with barbells is the dominant form of physical exercise a human being can do. And he even explains the history. It's only a few pages, but it's incredibly persuasive, and it makes logical sense. So it really hooked me in the beginning, and so I really was locked in. I was like, wow, this is cool. This is something new. I've never heard this before. I was like, this is not exercise science papers. I was like, I like this. I'm finally, after this long journey, getting somewhere that I like. And so I read that first chapter and I was hooked. And so I read the book from front to back that day because I had the day off, and I thought the book was great. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you a little bit about Starting Strength first before I tell you some more opinions that I have on the book. So essentially, this is what the book looks like in person. It's essentially a pretty tall book, I would have to say. And, there's really good illustrations in here. I'm very happy with the build of the book. So essentially, I'm going to open up the table of contents and kind of just tell you what to expect, because I had no idea, and I could have looked it up, but I didn't. So essentially, the first few pages explain why you should strength train. Then they have a chapter on the squat. And essentially, I like it because it's like a scientific textbook. It explains in terms of physics how to do the lifts. Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah, so I'll just go ahead and explain it now. So I read one of Eric Cressy's books. He's a big-time guy. I mean, he writes for T Nation, which is one of the biggest, highly linked to exercise websites. He writes for them. He has his own website. He has a bunch of traffic. He's a big deal, okay? In his book, Maximum Strength, his explanation of the squat is like no joke. It's like, put the bar on your trap, squeeze your shoulders together, stand up straight, get your chest up, spread your knees out, squat down. It's just really like stupid. And then Mark, he wrote a book essentially where the whole goal of this book is to literally cover everything you could possibly think of in detail. And so this is more of like a physics textbook. So obviously, if you've taken physics in high school or something, you know what a moment arm is. He explains what that is in here. You don't need to know anything about physics. He explains what that is in here and how that pertains to weightlifting. So when you open the book, don't get overwhelmed in the beginning. Just try to crank through those first 20 pages in the second chapter, and then it gets to the lifts, and then it's more systematic from there. So don't get overwhelmed if you see a bunch of physics stuff at the beginning. At first, when I saw this, I'm like, oh man, like what did I get myself into? But it's actually not that bad. It's not that long, and it's very clear. It's meant for your average person. Okay, it's definitely not a college level physics lesson. That's for sure. So the second chapter is the squat. Third chapter is the press. Fourth chapter is the deadlift. Fifth chapter is the bench press. Sixth chapter is the power clean. Seventh chapter is useful assistance exercises. So these are things like chin-ups, barbell curls, dips, things like that. And then the last chapter, number 8, is programming. So now is an appropriate time for me to tell you what starting strength is. So essentially, starting strength is not only the title of this book, but it's the title of the organization that Mark Rippetoe owns. So it includes a big website with a bunch of articles. It includes a forum with tens of thousands of people that are active on the forum. It includes a YouTube channel with videos, a podcast. It's a big organization that has grown, and I've watched it grow over the last 2 years quite a bit. So essentially, Starting Strength is the title of the organization and the book. But when someone says, I'm doing starting strength, essentially what they're saying is, I'm doing what is prescribed in the starting strength book, which is a workout for people that are novices, which essentially means even though you've lifted weights or maybe you haven't, it doesn't matter. You don't know what you're doing. So now they taught you how to do the lifts correctly. Now you really know what you're doing, and now you're going to do their program to start off with. That's essentially what it is. So I'm going to explain why starting strength is special. You're probably thinking now, well, a lot of people have written, exercise books before, right? And that's true. But the thing is not to the scale. Success has not been nearly to the scale as what Mark has had. So essentially, Mark he started with CrossFit, I guess. He himself was a powerlifter back in the day. He knows a lot about strength training, and then he bought his own big gym, and he had to learn how to coach people. And essentially, he came up with a method that works for everybody to get everybody strong from absolutely nothing. And so what he did is he bought all the rights to it from CrossFit or whoever he worked with, and then he called it Starting Strength, and he wrote a book about it. And it's worked for everybody. If you're a 40-year-old woman, Starting Strength works for you. If you're an 18-year-old man, it works for you. It's essentially a program that just gets you strong once you know how to do the lifts correctly. So that's essentially what it is. And that's kind of cool because, there's not like a big barrier to entry for this. It's nice. So essentially, it's special because so many people like it because it works. So it's a really popular book for a reason. The free market, that's one. I think Amazon is so successful for this very reason, because people are allowed to leave reviews. If you were not able to leave reviews about products, you wouldn't know what you're really buying. And so you can see Starting Strength has 1,000 5-star reviews on average or whatever. And you're kind of like, wow, it must have some kind of significance. That's really what made me buy the book, to be honest, because the description didn't really sell me. Looking back at it now, I think that's funny, because I knew so little. I thought I knew a lot. The Donnie Kruger effect, So essentially, that's why it's special. Starting Strength is special because it's been so successful with such a large amount of people. That's why. So essentially, I'm going to explain to you now my experience with Starting Strength. So I did do some strength training programs before, and I never really gained much weight. I gained a little bit of weight, a little bit of strength here and there, but not much. And so when I started the program, I only played baseball for a year. So my sophomore year, I started Starting Strength, and I went from 170 pounds at 6 feet tall to 215 at 6 feet tall. I honestly was questioning why I could not bench press 225. I never really could squat much, bench much. Not really. I mean, I think the most weight I ever benched in high school was 215 one time, and it felt really weird. It hurt my shoulders. But anyways, when I did Starting Strength, everything started to feel really good. And so I was pretty confident with my lifts, and I essentially got my lifts up. I was doing 395 pounds was my last squat weight that I did on the progression. So I essentially started at 185, and I ended up at 395 pounds for a set of 5. And then 2 back off sets of, I believe it was 375 for a set of 5, and then another set of 5. So I did one set of 5 on squats for 395, and then another one for 375 for a set of 5, and then another one of those. So essentially that's where I ended on Starting Strength. So for me, to see myself go from starting, and they have instructions for what weight to start at in the book. So to see myself start at 185 pounds, which is, I was honest with myself, that's where I should start, and end up at 395, was incredible. Now, at this point, I do have to say, you're not going to get to where I just said with just Starting Strength. Starting Strength is a program that I'll explain a little bit later, but it only lasts a few months. Now, the sequel to Starting Strength is this book right here, Practical Programming for Strength Training by Mark Rippetoe and Andy Baker. And essentially, in this book is explained the Advanced Novice Program. So Starting Strength has the Novice Program. This book has the Advanced Novice Program. So that's what I did to get to my 395 for a set of 5. So I did Starting Strength with the Advanced Novice Program once I finally got to that step. But if you're just trying to get started, Starting Strength is enough. But I would recommend go ahead and buying both of the books. So I was really happy with the results. The bad thing is, after that, I have yet to gain that much strength after that. I've really struggled to gain a lot. And obviously, I can go into my bench and deadlift and different things like that. I'm just giving you the squat as a sample. So I just want to say I was super happy about the weight gain that I made and the strength gain that I made from the book. But really, I think the biggest value of the book is the fact that it introduced me to barbells and really got me honed in on barbells. So for that reason alone, I think it's probably the most important book that I've read in my life, because I always knew physical fitness was one of the big pillars of life, but I wanted to do it the right way. Whatever the best way was, whatever it was, I wanted to do that, and doing cardio and being a skinny guy and stuff, it just didn't feel natural. I wanted to do something that felt right, and it was strength training. And he explains in the book why strength training is the ultimate form of exercise. So he explains things, Mark. He explains things like increases bone density. It increases the size of your muscle bellies. You literally get bigger and stronger. It increases, cardiovascular, respiratory health. Just if you compare it to any other type of exercise, cardio, I don't know, all these other wacky things people do, rubber band workouts, anything. It's way better from a physical, observatory scientific standpoint. It is health-wise a lot better. And if you want to know more about the health benefits of starting strength, I would recommend looking at John Sullivan's literature reviews, or Dr. Sullivan. And he's actually part of the starting strength crew, but he himself is a medical doctor, and he does literature reviews and things like that, which essentially a literature review, a lot of times people read them to keep up to date with the latest material. So literature review, essentially, if you're a smart person that knows how to sift out good papers and bad papers and research, you can place them all together in topics, and then people can read those and get up to date, because not everyone has time to read 60, 50 page long papers and determine if they're good or bad, right? So Dr. Sullivan does literature reviews for exercise science, whatever. And so he's really big on the medical side of it. So is Mark Rippetoe, and so is everyone else. So starting strength training in general is the healthiest thing you can do for yourself. I got into it because I wanted to gain weight and have more size, and that worked for me. I don't have trouble getting off the toilet, right? But like, you think about it, when you're like 80, 90 years old, or way earlier than that, you start to lose some of your strength. So strength is the ability to apply force. That's literally how we interact with our environment. I got that from Mark Rippetoe. And so you think about it, he says it's the most important thing in life, and quite frankly, I guess it is. If you really think about it, if you did not have the ability to apply force anymore, then life would not be too great, right? So I think I would rather be dead than not have the ability to apply force at all. So that makes sense. So what are some things I'm going to talk about the rest of this review? And you're probably wondering why I'm not like super hyped up. The reason I'm not super hyped up is because I started this 2 years ago, and I've had a lot of ups and downs with it. So I got my list up to a good point, but the thing is I ran into some problems. So essentially, I'm going to go ahead and talk about those. These would be the criticisms. So the criticisms I have of starting strength is this. And first off, I have to say this is coming from somebody who has never seen a starting strength coach until as of recently. Like about 2 months ago, I, for the first time in 2 years after reading the book, saw a starting strength coach. And all I have to say is, if you decide to go down this path and start strength training, if you're a working man or woman and you work for a living and you have your own money, I would highly recommend looking on the starting strength map and trying to find a coach and going to see one. Looking back, I wish I would have seen a starting strength coach as soon as I started reading the book. The problem is I didn't have that much money at the time, and I still don't, but I saved up enough to go see a coach. I paid $100 an hour for 2 hours, and it was worth every penny. And essentially, you will leave that place guaranteed knowing that you know the lifts, and all the starting strength coaches will answer your questions just boom, 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 like clockwork, like precisely. I think it's worth it. So looking back, I definitely wish I would have done that earlier. I talked to a starting strength coach, and this is it's not really a criticism of the book, but this is one of those things. He told me that he's only seen one person in his whole life that was able to read the book and do all the lifts, perfectly correctly, right? So there's no such thing as lifting perfectly, but doing all the lifts correctly. He's only seen one person that can do that. And so I would have to say all my lifts were pretty good for the most part, but my squat needed work, my deadlift needed work. I've read the book several times, and I've been working on it for years, watching YouTube videos, everything from their channel, everything. And I still had some things to be corrected. So I would say read the book for sure. It'll get you in the barbells, But as soon as you have the money and time, try to go see a starting strength coach. It really will be worth your while, I promise. And I have no affiliation at all with starting strength. I don't know a single one of those people that work there. The starting strength coaches that I've met, they don't even know my name. I just emailed them and went and saw them pretty much. And so, yeah, so they don't even know who I am. I'm just making this video purely by myself. I don't owe anybody anything, which is why I'm going to get into some more criticisms. So I have to say, I don't think the book says precisely enough that when you start to have trouble with the weight, so essentially the book follows linear progression, which is essentially increasing the weight every time you lift weights. So the problem with that is after a while, the intensity of the weight gets to be too much stress for your body. And so you think about it, let's say I started at 135 pounds on bench, and I add 5 pounds every other workout. So 1 week I have 2 bench days, and then the next week I'll have 1, right? So 1 week I add 10 pounds, 1 week I add 5 pounds. Let's say after several weeks, I'm at 185 pounds, and the weight's going up slower, but it's still going up, right? And then I add, a few more weeks. Let's say I'm at 205 pounds, and when I bench, I come down, I get it up, but it's kind of hard. And then I'm like on, rep number 3, I'm supposed to do 5. And I'm like, all right, I can do 2 more. I'm listening to heavy metal music. I'm like, yeah. I barely get that last rep in. That's not good for your body to really grind like that. It's not good to grind. And I really, really wish someone would have told me this before I did the program. Because I told you that I finally got to 395 on my squats, right? The problem is I wanted to get to like 415 because I talked to someone on the forums and he was actually a starting strength coach, and they convinced me that I'm doing so well at my height and weight that I could probably get to 415. And so I literally had that in the back of my head, and even though I was grinding at 365, I made it to 395 somehow miraculously. And I was trying so hard to get to 415, so hard. And essentially what happened is after I got 395, I failed twice that next week trying to get 400. My body was so worn out, and I was having incredible symptoms of overtraining, which on page 18, the symptoms of practical programming, these are the symptoms of overtraining. Diagnostic signs of overtraining in non-novices are severe. When finally apparent, obviously compromised performance, disrupted sleep, increased chronic pain, abnormal mood swings, chronic elevated heart rate, depressed appetite, weight loss, and other physical and mental abnormalities. In fact, these are the same physical symptoms characteristic of severe depression, a clinical problem also arising if they become overtrained on the same program, or from the accumulation of unabated stress. Sorry, I went to the next line too quickly. So essentially, this is what happened to me, is I did starting strength so long and so hard that I had severe symptoms of overtraining afterwards. And I think one of the biggest problems with starting strength is you see a bunch of people on the forums posting questions to Mark. He has his own Q&A thread. And they ask him, I feel overtrained. Like, what should I do? I'm doing starting strength. And it's difficult. I see how frustrated he gets on the forums, and it's difficult for him to understand. But the problem is he trains with pros, like the people at his gym and stuff, they're all starting strength coaches, and so is he. And so like when people come to his gym, he never lets them overtrain because they're under his surveillance, And so he wrote this book that teaches you how to do the lifts correctly from just right on. The starting strength coaches can show you how to do the lifts correctly, but it's like giving a kid a handgun almost, You don't know what the hell they're going to do with that power. And so like your average person like me, I was able to move loads so efficiently, move heavy weights, that I was able to keep following the program. I was able to keep adding weight every week. But after I try to get that 415, I really killed myself trying to get that. But even weeks leading up to that, I was super exhausted. So I had really bad symptoms. So I would say the biggest problem I have with starting strength is Mark Rippetoe does not explicitly say, do not grind workouts out for weeks on end. If reps number 4 and 5 are ball busters where your eyes are popping out of your head, don't do it. And maybe, I've read the book several times. I've never seen him say this. Maybe he does say it and I'm just retarded. But I've never seen him explicitly say this. I've seen him say, if you go to failure, you need to think about going to the next program. To me, failure is when you're coming up and then the bar goes back down without finishing the rep. And that's exactly what I did. And I failed twice. And he even recommends if you fail, try to do it again. And that's what I did. And essentially I had really bad problems with sleep, eating, everything like that for weeks. One of the worst times in my life. I felt absolutely miserable. So the first time I did starting strength, I felt absolutely miserable for like a month. So here I was like, this is the best thing in the world. I finally found a good program. I gained 40 pounds or whatever. I was huge. My family was like, holy shit, like, what are you doing? My friends are like, what the fuck are you doing? My friends saw me squatting, 350 for 3 sets of 5. And they're like, holy shit, like, what are you doing, man? Everything was going great. And then I hit this wall. And, it's probably, obviously, if you were in a starting strength gym, which would be the best thing to do. Yeah. Oh, yeah. By the way, if you have the money or you live near a starting strength gym, I would definitely check that out because you'll have someone watching everything you do. But from a layman's perspective, being someone who read the book, it's very difficult to see. Well, first of all, if you're reading that book, you're already not that knowledgeable for the most part, but what they look at a lot when you're training with a coach is bar speed. So when a coach gets to know you and they can watch you lift and stuff, if you come in for warm-ups and your bar's moving a little bit slower or something, they'll tell you to go home. Whereas if you're training by yourself, you'll be like, well, I've been adding weight the last few weeks. I'm just going to keep adding weight till it doesn't work because that's what the book says. And then that's how you wear yourself down into a hole. So I would say that's the biggest downside to starting strength. However, obviously, if I were to train at Wichita Falls with Mark Rippetoe himself, this never would have happened because he never would have let it happen. So honestly, it's not really like a legitimate criticism of Mark Rippetoe, but it's a criticism I personally have of the book. And so for that reason, I consider it to be a criticism. And so essentially, that's my biggest criticism right there. And then the next problem I have is practical programming for strength training kind of is not the best in my opinion. The first few chapters are great. They're great information for people who are not exercise science majors or physiology majors or whatever. Great information. But then it gets into the lifts. And it's good concepts, but it doesn't really give you anything to work with. And so essentially what I had to do is, I did starting strength. I had that horrible thing happen to me. I did the program again. And I was just trying different programs and stuff. And I was just never successful. So I finally called Andy Baker, who wrote Practical Programming. And he wrote me a workout personally for myself that was really great. And then so I made really good progress on that. So then I got my squat up, I got my bench up, everything. And then that was great. But then after doing that for so long, I needed another program, but I couldn't afford to get one. And so I started to feel overtrained again because I kept doing his program for too long. So essentially what I want to say is when you start getting into this field of strength training, you need to be patient if you don't have any money. If you're in college or something or in high school and your parents are not willing to pay for it, you have to have money because essentially starting strength teaches you how to do the lifts the correct way. They teach you how to get strong, gain a bunch of weight within months. It's incredible. It's hard to believe, but it's true. And then things get more personalized. You need a coach. You need someone who knows more than you to kind of show you where to go from there. And then things get more complicated. It's kind of like the division of labor, right? So if I have a plumbing issue, I'm not going to go to school to learn how to be a plumber. I'm not going to do an apprenticeship to be a plumber, right? I'm just going to pay some fucking dude to come in here and fix my problem because that's a lot easier for me. It's a lot more efficient for me. It's better for him. That's what he's trained in. Whereas if someone needs me to write computer program for him, some code or something, I can do that really well. And it'd be a big disadvantage for them to try to learn how to do that on their own, right? So division of labor, really important. Everyone knows how to, it's good for everybody to specialize. It makes the world a better place. And that's essentially a perfect example of this right here. Instead of trying to teach yourself how to program workouts at an advanced level after the beginning level of starting strength, it's better to pay someone to do it. And if you don't have any money, well, you're kind of screwed. And so I realized that if you get into this, you need to have some money if you want to continue. So it's good for people that are working, that are adults. You know, if you're in college, you probably don't have that much money, so it might be kind of hard for you. That's just one of those things I wanted to throw out there. However, at the same time, it's not impossible. And if you're patient, you definitely can make do in college. And it's a lot better to get involved with this than to not do it at all. I'm just saying, I wish someone would have told me, never grind your workouts out for weeks on end. Never do it. Never. After every set, you should feel like you could do another 2 reps. Okay? So after every set, you should feel like you could do another 2 reps when you're doing starting strength. When you get to the point where rep number 4 is a ball buster and you're listening to Screamo and you're like, I think I could do 1 more. And you just barely grind it out. The bar's barely moving up. Dude, you're really causing a lot of damage, a lot of stress to your nervous system, your body. I mean, at that point, you're not doing yourself any favors, okay? Working to failure is not a macho thing. You're going to make yourself feel horrible. You're doing professional stuff at this point, so you cannot be an idiot. You know, back in the day when you were in the gym, you would just go in there and do whatever the fuck you wanted. You can't do that anymore because you're actually lifting heavy weight, okay? You're going to hurt yourself. So I wish someone would have been a little bit more, maybe I wish I would have realized that a bit more. I don't know. I've read the chapter several times and he's not explicit enough about it in my opinion. That's my biggest criticism of starting strength. So from here, I have to say, in terms of positive, if you can't tell already, this is the best book I've ever read in my life. The most important book I've ever read in my life. Let's put it that way, because strength is, I mean, let's face it, the most important thing from a physical standpoint in somebody's life in terms of health. And so, yeah, I mean, this is pushed me down the right path. It has created my base. You know, it is very important, and I'm very grateful for that. But at the same time, I'm at a point right now where I'm trying to figure out what I need to do to keep increasing my lifts and keep getting stronger. And so what I'm doing is, it's kind of interesting, 2 of the most popular starting strength coaches who are both medical physicians just left starting strength to become, well, essentially one of their names is Jordan Feigenbaum and Dr. Feigenbaum, and they're both medical doctors. Another one's Austin Baraki. They used to work for starting strength. So they're medical doctors, but they used to write articles for their website, starting strength website, Mark's website. Mark Rippetoe owns the website. He owns the organization. He wrote the book. It's his business. They were coaches for Mark, starting strength coaches. It's a credential. And they used to write for the website. Well, they decided to go off on their own. They started their own company called Barbell Medicine. And the reason they did that is because there's a bit of difference in terms of programming ideas. So essentially, Barbell Medicine believes in something called rate of perceived exertion, which is why I chose to pursue them for my programming right now. And I don't know if it's going to work out or not. I mean, as of right now, they are not getting back to me very quick. I just bought the package online, and it's kind of slow. They're not emailing me super quick. So I don't know if there's getting too many people coming there or what, but as of right now, not super happy. I guess we'll see what happens. I don't know. Maybe something happened. Anyways, I'm going to try out them and Starting Strength Online Coaching, which is Starting Strength's new online coaching program that they created. And so rate of perceived exertion is essentially a way for you to gauge how hard a lift was. And Mark Rippetoe doesn't like it because he thinks it's subjective. He's old school. He likes to follow the program, and he does what he knows works. And he's trained thousands of people. Of course, nobody would argue with him. But the problem with that is that only works from what I can tell, it only works if you're training with a starting strength coach in their gym. Whereas when you're training by yourself, you have to be able to gauge how your lifts are going in some other way, right? So you have to be able to gauge that in another way. And that's why I think Austin Baraki and Jorgen Feigenbaum have really found a great market, because both of them are incredibly strong. I think Dr. Jorgen Feigenbaum is like number 20 in the world in terms of powerlifting weight for his weight class. Incredibly strong. He weighs 198 pounds. And he deadlifts like 725, benches 400 something, and squats like 600. Like just like freaking like this insane strength. And he actually does consulting for like professional powerlifters and CrossFitters, nutrition consulting and stuff like that. I mean, their organization is 2 doctors. It's Jordan's organization, but Austin works there as well. You have 2 physicians that are like top of their game, top of research, top of everything. And they have this online coaching thing. So I chose them because as far as I could tell right now, they're the best for online coaching. They used to work for Starting Strength. They don't anymore. They have their own thing now. And I'm giving them a go. As of right now, they're not emailing me back very quickly. You know, they asked me to fill out a questionnaire. I did, and it's kind of slow. To me, slow is like a few days. Okay, I check my email all the time. You know, I'm a computer science major, and when you work on the computer, you check email quite a bit. So to me, it's slow. But I think what it is they have so many people signing up right now. They might have a hard time getting to everybody because it's not a super big company. They have like 5-7 people working there. So essentially, yeah. So Mark Rippetoe, he disagrees with them on programming, and I'm sure there's other business conflicts as well. Like Jordan, he used to do his own online coaching, and that conflicted with Starting Strength online coaching. And so I think they just split because, I mean, it's just business reasons pretty much. But yeah, so I don't know. I don't know what's best at this point. I don't know if Starting Strength online coaching is best. I don't know if my computer shut off. Yeah, I don't know. Sorry about that. I don't know if Starting Strength online coaching is best. I don't know if Barbell Medicine is better. I don't know. That's something I'll have to get back to you on in the future. But what I can say for sure is Starting Strength is the best. It's the most important book you'll ever read in your life. And I wish I could train in a Starting Strength gym. If I had the opportunity, whatever the cost is, I would go train in a Starting Strength gym. I'm telling you, if you're a man, you're going to gain a bunch of weight, you're going to look good, you're going to be happy, and there's really nothing more satisfying than moving heavy weight, you know, in terms of physical ability, you know. And another important thing too is like when you're a big guy, like it really changes the way people treat you and the way you act and stuff as well. You know, you think about somebody who's 5'10", but what if they're 250 pounds, right? What if you're 6'3", a 190? If a guy that's 5'11", 250 is walking towards you in the bar, you're gonna get the fuck out of his way, right? Like when you're a fucking big dude, it doesn't matter how tall you are. When you're a big, heavy, strong guy, people respect you, okay? They don't want to fight you. It's human nature. I saw something on the Discovery Channel the other day. They did this experiment where they would go to bars and they had some guy that was like 5'7", 140, and he would grab somebody's beer and just look at him. And the person would be like, what the fuck are you doing, idiot? I'm going to rip your head off. And then they had this guy that was like 6'7", like 350, do the same thing to people. Same guy, actually. And that guy was like, holy shit. Like, he didn't say anything. The guy. So imagine if I had a drink and some guy that was 5'7" grabbed this and like looked at me and like took a drink. I would just fucking rip his head off, right? What if someone who's 6'7", 350 picks this thing up, you know? So we can't control how tall we are, but we can control how big we are and how strong we are to some degree. And so I'm really happy, and I owe forever gratitude to Mark Rippetoe, Starting Strength in general, for getting me introduced to barbells, because I am now 6 foot 220, and I feel great. I run faster, I look healthier, I feel better. I feel so healthy at this weight. And so for that reason alone, I'm super grateful for Mark and Starting Strength. And so at this point, I'm kind of confused in my training in terms of programming. I'm paying professionals to do it. I'm not going to try to figure it out myself. I've done enough reading and I've been through enough rabbit holes to where I don't want to do that anymore. So I'll let you know in the future what I think in terms of programming. I don't know yet. But strength training is important. And and if you're a woman too, you know, you might be wondering, oh, well, I want to be a skinny, you know, hot woman or whatever. Okay, well, I think a hot woman is somebody that has a nice butt, right? Nice legs, you know, toned arms, a little bit of muscle mass, you know? I think a lot of women think that lifting weights is going to make them look like Holly Mangold or whatever, that Olympian weightlifting girl that weighs like 500 pounds or whatever. I mean, she's a freak. I mean, I'll try to put up a picture of her. Well, that's all for you guys. Thank you for watching, and thank you. Have a great night. Subscribe, smash the like button, and let me know in the comments what you think. Was this a good review? All in all, I have to give the book a 5 out of 5 stars. Most important book I've ever read. Kind of have to do it. And, well, thank you, and have a good night.